Real intelligence never tries to impress. Have you ever noticed how the people who try the hardest to look smart often feel loud, and the ones who truly understand what they're doing barely raise their voice? That's not an accident. Real intelligence doesn't beg for attention. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't perform tricks to earn validation. It moves quietly, confidently, almost invisibly, and that's exactly why it's powerful. Think about the last time someone tried to overwhelm you with big words, complex explanations, or constant self-promotion. Did it feel convincing or disperaci? Now compare that with someone who speaks simply, clearly, and only when it matters. Which one felt trustworthy? Intelligence isn't volume. It's precision. It's knowing when to speak, when to listen, and when silence does the heavy lifting. And here, the uncomfortable truth most people avoid. The urge to impress is often a mask for insecurity. When you truly understand something, you don't need theatrics. You don't need to dominate every conversation. You don't chase approval because your confidence isn't rented from other people's reactions. It's owned. And the moment you realize that, your entire presence changes. Most people grow up believing intelligence is something you display, like a trophy. Get the right answers. Show everyone you're ahead. Prove your worth. But what if that belief is backwards? What if real intelligence is less about showing and more about seeing patterns others miss, seeing your own blind spots, seeing when ego is about to sabotage clarity? Have you ever caught yourself talking just to sound impressive, filling silence because you feared being perceived as less capable? That's not intelligence working. That's fear negotiating your behavior. And fear is loud. Intelligence is calm. When you stop trying to impress, your brain frees up energy previously wasted on performance. You listen better. You observe more. You respond instead of react. And suddenly, your decisions sharpen. Conversations deepen. People start leaning in, not because you're trying harder, but because you're finally present. That shift is subtle, but it's transformative. Consider this: the smartest people in any room rarely rush to prove it. Why? Because intelligence recognizes that every interaction is an opportunity to learn, not compete. When your priority is understanding instead of impressing, you ask better questions. You notice nuance. You allow complexity instead of forcing simple narratives just to sound decisive. And here's the paradox. The less you try to look intelligent, the more intelligent you appear. Why? Because people trust authenticity over performance. They sense when someone is grounded versus when someone is posturing. Think about leaders you respect. Are they constantly shouting their brilliance? Or do they project quiet certainty? That certainty isn't arrogance. It's clarity. It's built from experience, reflection, and the humility to admit what they don't know. And that humility is a hidden multiplier. It keeps learning alive. It prevents stagnation. It turns intelligence into a lifelong process, not a fixed identity you have to defend. Now, imagine walking into your next conversation with zero intention to impress. No mental script. No pressure to outshine. Just curiosity. What changes? Your body relaxes. Your tone softens. Your attention sharpens. You start hearing what people actually mean, not just what they say. And that's where real insight lives, between the lines. Most communication isn't verbal. It's emotional, contextual, subtle. When you're busy performing intelligence, you miss those signals. But when you're grounded, they become obvious, and people feel seen. That's powerful, because being understood is rarer than being impressed. Anyone can memorize facts. Few can create psychological safety, and intelligence that builds connection always outperforms intelligence that seeks applause. This is why the most influential communicators don't flood conversations with brilliance. They guide them. They simplify complexity. They make others feel smarter, and that creates loyalty, trust, and authority without force. There's also a strategic advantage here most people overlook. When you stop trying to impress, you become unpredictable in the best way. You're not locked into defending an image. You can change your mind without shame. You can admit uncertainty without collapsing your credibility. And ironically, that flexibility makes your thinking stronger. Rigid minds break, adaptive minds evolve. Ask yourself, would you rather protect the illusion of intelligence or expand the reality of it? Performance locks you into ego. Curiosity unlocks growth, and growth compounds. Every time you choose understanding over appearance, you reinforce a habit of depth. Over time, that depth becomes instinct. You don't need to signal intelligence. Your decisions, timing, and clarity reveal it automatically. Painfully notice opportunities open. Conversations shift in your favor, not because you're louder, but because you're sharper. Another hidden layer. Trying to impress creates cognitive noise. Your brain splits focus between thinking and self-maneering. How do I sound? Do they think I'm smart? That internal commentary drains bandwidth. Real intelligence requires bandwidth. It needs space to analyze, synthesize, and connect ideas. When you remove the performance layer, your thinking accelerates. Patterns emerge faster. Solutions feel cleaner. You're not distracted by image management. You're engaged with reality, and reality rewards engagement. High performers across disciplines, business, science, art share this trait. They prioritize accuracy over appearance. They would rather be correct than admired. And that orientation compounds into mastery. Because mastery isn't built by impressing spectators, it's built by confronting truth, refining skill, and staying intellectually honest, especially when it is uncomfortable. Here's where it becomes personal. How often have you stayed quiet because you feared sounding wrong, or spoken too much because silence felt risky? Both behaviors orbit the same center, the need to impress. Real intelligence reframes that moment. Instead of asking, "How do I look?" it asks, "What's true?" That question changes everything. It invites exploration instead of defense. It turns mistakes into data, and it builds resilience. When your identity is infused to appearing smart, feedback becomes fuel instead of threat. You iterate faster. You recover quicker. You adapt more fluidly. That's not just intellectual growth, that's psychological strength. And people gravitate toward that strength, not because it's flashy, but because it feels stable, predictable in integrity, flexible in thought. That combination is rare and magnetic. Think about social dynamics. Rooms are often filled with subtle competitions for status, recognition, and validation. Most participants are performing versions of themselves they hope will be accepted. The person who isn't performing stands out instantly, not by force, by contrast. They're listening while others posture. They're concise while others ramble. They're curious while others defend. That contrast creates authority without aggression, and authority rooted in composure is incredibly persuasive. You don't need to convince people you're intelligent. Your behavior communicates it. Your restraint signals confidence. Your questions reveal depth, and your calm under pressure suggests understanding. These signals operate below conscious awareness. People respond instinctively. They trust you faster. They defer more easily. They collaborate more openly. All because you remove the need to impress from the equation. So what does this look like in practice? It starts with intentional pauses. Let silence breathe. Let thoughts form fully before speaking. Replace the urge to impress with the goal to clarify. Ask one more question than you think you need. Admit uncertainty without apology. Notice when ego tries to hijack the moment and let it pass. These micro decisions compound into a new presence. A presence grounded in understanding instead of display. And that presence changes how others experience you. Conversations become more meaningful. Decisions become more precise. Influence becomes more natural. You're no longer chasing perception. You're embodying capability. And capability speaks louder than performance ever could. Here's the final insight. Most people never articulate. Intelligence is not a costume. It's a relationship with reality. And reality doesn't care how impressive you look, only how accurately you perceive and respond. The moment you internalize that, the game changes. You stop optimizing for applause and start optimizing for truth. That shift frees enormous mental energy. It sharpens judgment. It deepens connection. And it positions you as someone people trust instinctively. So, next time you feel the urge to impress, pause. Ask yourself, am I performing or understanding? Choose understanding again and again, because real intelligence never tries to impress. It tries to see clearly, think deeply, and act precisely. And when you live from that place, influence becomes effortless, confidence becomes quiet, and your presence speaks before you ever say a word.